Richard Justice, great writer for MLB.com, kind enough to recap Hall of Fame and the voting and the process and who he elected and some hits and misses and whatnot. And I always like to call. Someone always gets snubbed, but we'll talk a little baseball with Richard. How you been, pal?
I've been good, Rich. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Good to catch up. All right, so we've got Raines, Bagwell, Pudge Rodriguez. I'll get to who you voted for in a moment, but any issue here with these three?
My issue, I have zero issue with those three, but the bottom line for me is that this generation of baseball players is dramatically and vastly underrepresented in the Hall of Fame, and that there were probably 15 deserving candidates, and I especially would point to Schilling, who was, it shouldn't even be a discussion about Schilling. The era he pitched in, the way he dominated. Same thing, Mike Mussina. Same thing, Edgar Martinez. People say Edgar didn't wear a glove, didn't play defense, but his offensive numbers were overwhelming. So I think at a time when there's more and better ways to assess players, sometimes we don't do a good enough job. And obviously, Vlad Guerrero and Trevor Hoffman are on the threshold, so they're going to get in at some point. But I will say this, we have voted in 12 players the last 4 years, and that's the most since the first four classes. So we're trending in the right direction, but there are more guys worthy of the Hall of Fame.
I agree with you on a couple fronts. You know, to me, Schilling, it's a no-brainer, and I'm just wondering.
No-brainer.
Yeah, I know, and you know this because you're a voter. I get the whole moral clause that exists, and maybe everyone has a different interpretation. Does his off the field, the persona, the political views, the comments, the stuff that he says, is that hurting him with some of these voters?
Well, clearly it did, because some have said, I'm not going to vote for him. He did. I mean, what he did was disgraceful. He advocated, basically retweeted a thing advocating killing journalists. He can't do that. But the guy, when you start looking at what he did in the World Series, that ranks up there with Koufax and Gibson. What he did in the postseason, I mean, that's just stuff that's on another level. On this ballot, the two best players on the ballot were Bonds and Clemens. The third best player was Schilling. And I want to go, if you're not voting for him, you might want to reevaluate how you're assessing players. Now, if you just say, hey, I don't like the guy, I'm not voting for the guy, I would say two things. Fine, that's your right.
Then don't have a vote, though.
Yeah, I would say, two, you shouldn't have a vote.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's not I once said to a college football coach, he picked a quarterback, and I said, I don't like that guy. And he said, we're not going to dinner, and if we were going to dinner, you wouldn't be invited anyway.
I don't have, and I agree with you. Guerrero, to me, I don't know if the WAR figures hurt him. I don't know if it's the sabermetrics people, but the bottom line is the numbers, the hitting over 300, right-handed bat, that span of 10, 11 years. Here's where one that you pointed out, I'll disagree a little bit. To me, Mike Mussina is not a Hall of Fame pitcher.
Oh, my God. I'll go with you tooth and nail on that. He pitched in an era when a lot of run support. Am I talking or you?
No, I'm just saying. I'm just giving you my comment first. A lot of run support.
Yeah, the ballparks got smaller. The strike zone became the size of a postage stamp. The players got bigger. The bats got harder. And he was a dominant player for his time. I mean, an absolutely dominant player for his time. Almost 300 wins, and his career wins above replacement, above many, many Hall of Famers. In the case of Edgar and Schilling and Mussina, it's not even a discussion for me. Whoever's looking at the bar there on those guys is got his bar in the wrong place. Mike Mussina should be in the Hall of Fame. I assume he's going to get there. And even the traditional ways we measure pitchers, he's got 270 wins. The guy pitched through 3,500 innings. So I have no problem with Mike Mussina being in the Hall of Fame.
Can I counter that? You mentioned never reached 300 wins, never won a Cy Young. I think he won 20 games once in his career, his last year with the Yankees. I get it, the postseason, okay. You mentioned the ballparks and everything. Never led the AL on either strikeouts or ERA. I know he was top 5 or 6 in other categories. I get that. To me, when I think Hall of Fame pitchers, again, it's just my opinion. You have the vote. I don't. I don't see him as a Hall of Famer. I think he's borderline. Yeah. Would you put Pettit in?
His wins above replacement, 83. That's higher. That's higher than Nolan Ryan's. That's higher than Jeff Bagwell, Brooks Robinson. And it's higher than Joe DiMaggio. I'm not saying Mussina's a better player than Joe DiMaggio. But I just say in the context, when you're talking about assessing his career, it's on an elite level.
Okay.
Andy Pettitte, I tend to think he's going to enter at about 50 or 55%. The problem for me is there's a backlog. I looked at this year's ballot. There were 15 or 16 guys. I left off Vlad Guerrero. Felt terrible about it. Lee Smith is now off the ballot.
Yep.
I didn't vote for him. So how do you pick 10 to vote for? I would imagine, given the championships, given the postseason, he's got a great chance. He's also going on the ballot the first as Mariano Rivera, and then Jeter's the next year, and then 2 years after that it's Big Papi and A-Rod. So there are a lot of star power coming up. Chipper next year, and we'll have a whole Scott Rowland, Jim Thome debate, and all that.
Sure.
Meanwhile, as Hoffman, as Vlad get in.
Okay. All right. Well, again, we'll agree to disagree on the Mussina. Now you had Bagwell. Bonds, Clemens, Hoffman, Martinez, Mussina, Raines, Rodriguez, Schilling, Billy Wagner. Here's my question. I asked this yesterday. Are you the trend? It's trending up now with the steroid era and the PEDs and these players. It seems as though, I don't know, is it more of the old school voters or the guys that have been doing it for a long time, like yourself, where, okay, look, they took steroids, everyone did. Let's just go by what they did on the field. Stick that to the side for a moment. Or is there still this, I'm never going to vote for a guy because he took PEDs? Because you look at the numbers with Bonds and Clemens, their votes have gone up, 9-10%, I think.
With Bonds and Clemens, okay, when you get the ballot in your hand, you don't know who used steroids and who didn't. Now, you can play a guessing game. I think this guy did. I think this guy didn't. However you want to do that. In the case of Bonds and Clemens, they were both Hall of Famers before they get big. By the time Barry added all that muscle, he had finished top 5 in MVP 7 times. He had 445 home runs. His wins above replacement was ahead of Yastrzemski, Clemente. Clemens, same thing. Just take his Red Sox years.
Of course.
Career 306, 3 Cy Young Awards, MVP. His career was roughly contextual to Tom Glavine, who's in the Hall of Fame, and then all the things he did after that. And also, I would say with Clemens, it's a reminder that there's a gray area, that people are neither good nor bad. By the time I got to know him really well, he was a great ambassador for the game. I saw him do acts of kindness for clubhouse attendants, for teammates, for PR people on the lower rung. One night he hit a kid in Lexington, Kentucky, and I was talking to the kid, and Roger walked in, asked her, "You okay?" Blah, blah, blah. By the time they're finished, he's agreed to stay over the day and work with the pitchers on that team on your mental approach to bullpen, how you handle the weight room, all of that stuff. So I'm saying, I'll tell you another story, too. I was there at his house one time, and he had specifically made bobbleheads for the New York City Police Department. Was going through, it's like a 200 of them. He's going through signing them. Now, does that mean he belongs in the Hall of Fame? No, but it tells you that the guy was not evil, that there was some good to the guy, and I'm comfortable if he ends up sitting up there between Frank Robinson and Hank Aaron. I'm very comfortable with that, and I would imagine they would be.
But to go back, you answered it, but you didn't. As a voter that you are, then you have you basically, because everything's trending up, and the guys that you voted for with the PEDs and whatnot. And I agree with you. Before they did it, they had Hall of Fame careers. Do you see this trend now with some of the voters who will look at it and say, you take that aside, they were on their path to being a Hall of Famer anyway, so we're just going to put them in? Because, again, the numbers kind of, it seems as though eventually we'll get in your, whether you want to say Sosa or not, but maybe the Albert Bells, the Rodriguez, the Clemens, the Bonds, and the whatnot. And these are all the guys that really under that dark cloud. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it gets really complicated because in the case of McGwire, I'm pretty sure that the foot injuries he'd had, he was going to quit. I mean, I'm pretty sure or whatever he did, part of it was out of desperation. I know Andy Pettitte has told me he took it out of desperation. Like, hey, you're scared. You don't know what's around the corner. Somebody says, I got something that'll work.
Sure.
You'll try it. And, I don't think that accounts for Bonds. He was already a great player. He just wanted he wanted to be better. He wanted to be greater than great.
Let me ask you this, and you're right, and it's Pettitte also, he came out, and you saw, right, try to make amends in the apology and everything. Last one is I wrap it up, because I'm always curious when I talk to guys that have a Hall of Fame vote in any sport. it seems as though the guys that don't want to vote certain players in, or if they have the agenda, or the voters that will not vote a baseball player in because of the PDs, but yet you're still voting for these guys during regular season awards and MVPs and Cy Young. To me, it's a little bit of it's hypocritical.
Yeah, somebody mentioned that. You're not the first person to ask that. I don't know how that factors in. You know, my experience with steroids was, and I was around the A's a lot in the 80s. Like, I saw them on these special diets, lifting weights, and they got big. I had no context for steroids. So I think we were all slow to come around. I think once the commissioner recognized there was a problem, he had a team of doctors give him a report, and he almost immediately instituted a minor league testing program and then started arm twisting the union to agree to steroid testing.
Right.
So it's part of the history of the game, you know, and I think we all struggle. Is it a triple homicide? Is it? I think if you surveyed all the voters, you'd get the whole spectrum of answers on that.
I'll tell you, I'd love to be in that locker room in the A's, probably popping them in like Pez dispensers.
Well, you know, yeah, they were, a friend of mine covered that team and once went to a player, and I think the player was Carney Lansford, it might have been Eckersley, and said, geez, I feel like an idiot. I didn't know all this was going on. And, and the player said, well, look, they weren't out here doing it in the middle of the room, so, you know, we didn't know. You know, and there was a generation of players that believed, and management that believe, hey, weightlifting is bad for baseball. Remember when Lance Parrish started lifting weights?
Yep.
Sparky Anderson, oh, my God, it's going to end his – So, like, I came in from an approach like, well, that ain't helping him.
No.
Obviously, it did.
Hey, Richard, I got to let you get out of here. We're wrapping up. Hey, good stuff. Always good to catch up. And I like the debate. We won't debate Musino. Next time we'll debate maybe like Mattingly, Keith Hernandez, and whatnot.
Okay, Rich.
All right, you got it, pal. You got it. Be well. Richard Justice, really good writer. Covered the Astros for so many years, too, with the Houston Chronicle.